Coming to difference between aerobic and anaerobic glycolysis. Generally, this term aerobic is not commonly used. Instead, what we say is complete oxidation of glucose. Complete oxidation of glucose in the sense that this glucose, which is converted to pyruvate, glucose conversion into pyruvate, glucose converted to 2-pyruvate. These 2-pyruvates will enter into mitochondria and become 2-acetyl-CoA. 2 is not written here. 2 molecules will make 2 molecules, 2-pyruvate to 2-acetyl-CoA. Those 2-acetyl-CoA enter into TCA cycle individually. That means 2 TCA cycle. And then make NADH, FADH and carbon dioxide. That means 6 carbons in glucose are completely oxidized into carbon dioxide. That is called complete oxidation of glucose. And this happens in the presence of mitochondria and in the presence of oxygen. That means the cell should have mitochondria because that's where is your TCA cycle located. And also it should have oxygen because electron transport chain needs oxygen. As you see here, oxygen O2 necessary for electron transport chain. So in the presence of oxygen and mitochondria, your glucose is completely oxidized into carbon dioxide. That is called complete oxidation of glucose. Okay. Fate of lactate. Fate of lactate in the sense like what happens to the lactate? That's what I meant. What happens to lactate that is made under anaerobic situation? As I was explaining briefly, this lactate will return back. Means the venous return from the anaerobic area, it will enter in the venous blood and then it will go to heart, and from there it will get into the arterial system and it will be supplied to the organs. So especially when it reaches liver and heart, what happens? So in the liver and heart, as you see, in the liver and heart, the ratio of NADH over NAD is lower than in the skeletal muscle. That means what? The NADH over NAD ratio low. Low NADH over NAD ratio means what? Which molecule is high and which molecule is low? Low NADH over NAD ratio. What is high and what is low in this? NADs are high and NADH is low. That means liver and skeletal heart, in liver and heart, generally they contain higher NAD levels. They will have higher NADs. Liver and heart will have higher NADs compared to NADH. And that's why they are able to use lactate using the same enzyme, lactate dehydrogenase. I will tell you how. First thing you remember that fact. Liver and heart, simply they have higher NADs compared to NADH. Okay. Now, let's look at this reaction again. And this lactate dehydrogenase, as you see, it is catalyzing a bidirectional reaction, both the direction. That means you can use lactate dehydrogenase to go from left to right or right to left. It all depends what is the concentration of molecules. If you have more pyruvate, more NADH, you go from left to right. If you have more lactate, more NAD, you come from right to left. See, look at this. If you have more lactate, more NAD, you conduct reaction in the other direction, lactate to pyruvate. And if you have more pyruvate, more NADH, you go from pyruvate to lactate. So it all depends on the flux of the reaction. Flux in the sense concentration of these molecules. So in the liver and heart, what is high? NAD is high. And they are getting lactate from the other sites, other tissues. So that means now in the liver and heart, you have more lactate and more NAD plus. That means they will be able to convert lactate back into pyruvate. That's what they do. So in the liver and heart, so they convert lactate to pyruvate. In the liver and heart, lactate is oxidized into pyruvate by producing NADHH plus. And that NADHH plus will give additional ATPs for them, especially for the heart. Remember, heart always contracts and it needs energy. And which is the primary fuel for heart for generating energy? Is it glucose, amino acids or fatty acid? It is a fatty acid because fatty acid gives more ATPs. We are going to see that. So lactate can be used by heart as an alternate fuel because it is going to generate NADH, and that is 2.5 ATP. Okay, so that is what is about how lactate is being used coming from the peripheral tissues. In exercising skeletal muscle, NADH or NAD ratio high favors lactate formation because there is more NADH. That is why it goes from pyruvate to lactate side rather than lactate to pyruvate side. Okay, so this is what is the fate of lactate. And in the liver, especially if the person is in fasting condition, this happens only during fasting, starvation, like people doing intermittent fasting or something, when glucagon is more than insulin. During that time, you see here, RBC always conducts anaerobic glycolysis. The product is lactate. Lactate comes out into the blood, and liver is taking that lactate, converting that into pyruvate, and the two pyruvates which are made from lactate will be converted to 1 glucose. Let me add that here. 2 lactate will be converted to 2 pyruvate by reversing the reaction because of that ratio, NADH-NAD ratio. 2 lactate to 2 pyruvate, and these 2 pyruvate will go into a glucose molecule and using 6 ATPs. This happens in the liver. That means your lactate coming from red blood cells can be converted into glucose, not always go into TCA cycle by making pyruvate acetyl-CoA TCA cycle. It can also go back into glucose, and that glucose enters into the blood, and red blood cell can take it or brain can take it, and that completes the cycle. And that little cycle here is called as Cori cycle. Remember the name Cori. Cori cycle is, it is just like that, lactate converting back into glucose and getting into blood. Okay, so this process of conversion of lactate into glucose is called as gluconeogenesis, and you need 6 ATPs for that. Okay, we will study that later. So that's about fate of lactate. Any doubt here? Any question? So what happens to lactate in the heart and liver? It is converted to pyruvate, and whatever the fate of pyruvate is. Pyruvate can go into acetyl-CoA TCA cycle, or it can simply go into glucose formation, especially in the liver. Heart doesn't make glucose, it just uses it.